What's up, guys? It's your boy Obby here. Now, if you don't know, I've gone cynical and jaded and absolutely sick of the real world, so I decided to rebrand my channel into an Obby channel. For those that don't know, an Obby is actually short for obstacle course and is featured in the video game Roblox. So today we are going to do a Roblox map called Escape the Krusty Krab. So I hope you enjoy this content because this is the future of the channel from now on. Hate to say it. Actually, I don't hate to say it. This doesn't really much look like the Krusty Krab, does it? Is this just me, or we got some numbers down here? What do they do? Oh! I'm assuming this is a Krusty Krab. Oh, that person just died. What is this? Is this a hot dog? I don't know hot dogs are the Krusty Krab.
Pizza! Pizza!
Wow, that is great.
Pizza!
Alright, well, we've got pizza. Alright, we'll get a Krusty Krab. It's thematic. It's immersive. Oh, this is gonna be light work. Just watch. Oh my god. These hands are too fast. There's a leaderboard over here, as you can see. It looks like Dugga Fatete is number 1 right now, and I respect that. I'm failing to see where the Krusty Krab element will come in. I mean, this doesn't much look like the Krusty Krab to me, but you know, I haven't seen SpongeBob in a few years, so maybe. What is this? What is this? Oh, there's climbing in Roblox. Well, that makes sense. I mean, if I'm gonna be a parkour master, I've got to I've got to master the art of climbing. Do we want the pizza? Do you want to whip the pizza out? The Krusty Krab pizza?
Pizza!
Yeah, let's whip out the pizza. Let's whip out the pizza, boys. So if you didn't hear, my student loan debt came in. I'm $60,000 in debt. I'll be paying about $500 for the next 10 years of my life, you know. Makes you wonder, right? College truly is a scam, isn't it? Like, it truly makes you think, right? Why did I go to this institution, you know? Frankly, why do we as a society value a bachelor's degree? I'm gonna fucking kill myself. It's a purely financial move, is what I'm trying to say, basically, you know? It feels like something that wasn't really done to actually prop up the student, but more to fill the pockets of these people that are already rather rich, by the way, you know, these millionaires and billionaires. And even then, like, it feels like it's more of an element of prestige, you know? And for some majors, I can understand if you're trying to get into law or perhaps the medical field, but if you're trying to get into certain majors, like, you know, film, right? A college degree is frankly a scam, you know? You're better off just throwing yourself out in the world rather than pursuing college. So if there's one message I can give to you, to my Roblox audience here, to my Robloxers, it's don't go to college, you know? Just don't go to college. You're probably thinking to yourself, Obby, isn't it a little bit hypocritical of you to criticize the institutions that are primarily driven by profit, but then prop up the people who are driven by financial situations? And I say, I don't think it's hypocritical at all, because if I'm being honest with you, I mean, we're just working class folk, right? We don't, you know, some of us were born with more privilege than the others, you know, but when it comes down to it, we're not this abstract conglomerate, you know, we're real people. We're not, you know, this billion-dollar company that's able to evade taxes. We're the working class, and I think it's important to make note of that, you know. I think it's very important to find a distinction between what the people want and how companies or how conglomerates act, you know. Conglomerates are primarily driven by profit, you know, no matter what people will tell you, you know, no matter how many times people will tell you, oh, corporations are built by scientific growth, you know, corporations are built by speedy technology. It's all kind of bull, you know, and to an extent that's true, but their first motive is money. If there's no money to be found, they're not going to do it. It's as simple as that, you know. So this question comes where, well, is that necessarily a bad thing, you know? I think yes and no. In some ways, I mean, money has been a motivator to do certain, you know, good things, right? I would argue that the invention of the car was maybe something that was driven by profit that ended up being beneficial to the whole world. Does that mean that we should have more regulation or less regulation? That I'm not so sure about. I mean, when you think about it, like, to an extent, I understand people that don't want more regulation. I mean, when you think about it, like, the government, controversial take here, is not exactly the most reliable body or most reliable institution in our country. However, I think if we were to look at the alternative here, right, to look at the the corporations that literally are not paying minimum wage. If they could have it their way, the working class would be, frankly, we'd still be in times of slavery, right? And in a way, some might argue we are, right? We're not in literal slavery, right? But we are in a metaphorical slavery, in a sense, right? The way our prison systems are built and, all that stuff. So now, you're probably asking yourself, Obby, what do I do then? How do I overcome the plight of the working class? And frankly, it's not really something that you as an individual can do. I mean, obviously there's the pick yourself up by the bootstraps mentality, and that has worked very well for some people, I will not lie, but regardless, there comes a certain level of privilege that stems from picking yourself up from your bootstraps, unless of course you're truly lucky. But when it comes down to it, you should be realistic about your expectations rather than pointing blame at yourself or pointing blame at the individual. Maybe point blame at the institutions that create the individual, that create the idea of privilege or the idea of systemic oppression, whether that be through literal racial oppression or even just class oppression. I think it's important to identify that and ultimately work for systemic change in these issues. Now, this brings us to this topic. Should corporations be allowed to talk about, things like social inequality or economic inequality? And I think, in my opinion, the answer would have to be yes, only because, at the very least, it just brings awareness to, like, these issues, Whereas before, we would get them in mostly niche films, I think by bringing these issues to the forefront, it gets more access to the cause, right? It provides a more accessible cause. Obviously Disney, I doubt Disney is interested in toppling capitalism anytime soon, but I also think it's reliant on the creator, right? I think it really shouldn't matter, simply because if the end result are people being more aware of, climate change and how people take it for what it is, I think that's an important thing to do, I think it's... Well, I don't think it's a valiant thing, because again, right, Disney is this massive corporation that has actually been responsible for a lot of the issues that it does criticize, especially in regards to capitalism and things like that. I think it's still, overall beneficial to get the message out there. I was looking into the other day about the film Snow Buddies, because who doesn't love Snow Buddies? Or the Buddies series in general, Talk about a sequel franchise that surpassed the original, right? Whereas Air Bud was simply constricted by, sports. The Buddies went places, The Buddies the Buddies did Halloween, they became superheroes. They were in a more Arctic environment, They did a lot of things. They searched for treasure, right? It's a much more versatile brand, and I think that benefits it a lot, especially because after a while, Air Bud starts to get too absurd, whereas in my opinion, the Air Buddies series embraces it. Anyways, I digress. The Air Buddies series actually had quite a long and thorough history regarding negligence. For those that don't know, in the film Snow Buddies, there were about 30 dogs used in the production of that movie. However, 5 of them actually died during production because, and this is where things get, juicy or, that's a bit tone deaf, I'll say rather messed up, right? The Buddies the actual dogs themselves are about 6 weeks old. Now, film regulation says that dogs have to be at least 8 weeks old because, anything younger than that, their immune systems are simply too weak. They're more prone to disease. Despite this, Disney actually got 6-month-old puppies. Now, there's actually a few things of note here. For one, the breeder actually gave Disney 6-week-old dogs. I think that they said that it was 8 weeks old, but no. So definitely the breeder's at fault here. And by the way, breeders in general are quite a dangerous breed, or, no pun intended, but I'm digressing here. Anyways, so not only were the puppies 6 weeks old, but they were also in Alaska, which is prone to have a lot of disease that specifically impact dogs or puppies in a negative way. So in that way, they've essentially created this death trap for these dogs, and many of them fell ill, and actually 5 of them died, which is honestly very unfortunate. I think it highlights this problem and I think the fact that it's been swept under the rug kind of highlights this great issue, because now you have Disney, right, scapegoating the breeder, saying that, they were told they would be given 8-week-old puppies. They weren't, which obviously is absolutely a fault of the breeder, but at the same time, clearly Disney was negligent in taking care of these dogs. I mean, the very fact that, they even thought of making the movie, in all honesty, bringing, these tiny puppies into a more volatile and dangerous environment kind of shows how driven by their profits they are, So in a way that actually does kind of connect to the earlier topic we were talking about before, right? Should corporations be allowed to talk about things like social issues? Especially a company like Disney, right? Where they've had a history of sort of being on the wrong side of these problems, right? But yeah, we're slowly eking our way, we're slowly making our way through this Escape the Krusty Krab, I think it's called. Again, I'm not really quite sure where the Krusty Krab elements come in, but I'm hoping it'll really tie itself together at the end here. On another related topic, how's everyone doing in this day and age, in the day of the pandemic, right? We're almost done. We're almost done with it. Well, done in the sense that people are getting vaccinated, right? I think now we're at peak eligibility. I personally haven't gotten my vaccines yet. I do have an appointment to get it done, so that's exciting. But yeah, I mean, overall, obviously it's not a good time. And the irony is, I'm a pretty extreme introvert, right? I have a lot of social anxiety, things like that. So in the beginning of the pandemic, it wasn't that bad, right? It's it's business as usual, right? You stay inside, all that good stuff, right? You just stay inside the house and, you play video games all day or do your work, right? However, I find myself, the farther this goes down, the more you start to take for granted little things, right? Even the very act of just hanging out with the boys, you start to miss it, right? I'm, a little bit at risk, but not really. I think everybody is a little bit at risk, just sometimes it's a negligent amount, but is that really the same as not being at risk at all? I wouldn't say so, because, everybody is at risk, and there are exceptions, and you don't want to be the exception to that rule, so why risk it, Why risk it? It's almost like, that whole urban legend where if you say Bloody Mary in front of a mirror 3 times, she comes out and kills you. I don't think anyone legitimately believes in that. And frankly, the percent chance of that happening is probably less than 0. Maybe even less. I'd say it's 0.000000001%. But why risk it? It's such an avoidable way to die. It's why even bother, right? Why even bother incurring the wrath of the demon, right? So yeah, what kind of movies are you guys watching? I find myself watching mostly foreign films these days. I don't know why. It's not exactly an intentional thing I do. But I just kind of do it. I think I've just kind of grown a little bit jaded at American films. I find that a lot of them end up the same. And I mean, even when it comes to, cinema, right? The Martin Scorsese's or the Tarantino's. Whereas I feel like foreign films tend to live out their concepts a lot better. And they tend to talk about things that I think, and provide a perspective of things that I think, are nuanced, right? For example, one film that really stood out to me recently, and, very popular movie, Parasite, right? To me, the film touches up on class and capitalism and things like that. Bong Joon-ho in general is one of my favorite directors because a lot of his movies are about these class issues, which I think is a very compelling problem. And I think he in particular always provides nuanced looks into it, you know? I digress here, but a movie like Parasite does just that. I almost feel like if Parasite were made by an American director, the ending would be a little bit more romanticized, you know? A lot more safe. And the tone of the film, which I think is one of the strongest parts, the fact that the movie sort of morphs into this thriller. It starts off as this kind of like cute, lighthearted concept and morphs into this like sort of sickening thriller, right? I think that's something that could not have been pulled off by an American director. And I also think it's interesting because, you know, people in other nations, we're a very Eurocentric society, obviously, because we are kind of a Euro. Well, not really. Well, American's not really European, but you know, even then, like obviously, did I win? Am I over? Am I done? Okay, well, I guess we're done with the map. I mean, again, I really don't see any Krusty Krab here, right? Like at all. Am I a fool or this map is called Escape the Krusty Krab, and besides this one hamburger I've got and this pizza, it's not really very Krusty Krab like, you know, but that's fine. I'm not complaining. I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Obby's Awesome Films. This will definitely be the first of many, you know, because this is a Roblox obstacle course channel now, an Obby channel, if you will. So, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and live out my gamer fantasy and kill myself.